I don't know what to do. I am so upset this morning, so angry, so bothered with all my friends, my family, the people who live all around us. They just complain and complain and complain. We have manna every morning. We have quail every night. We have sweet water to drink. And they complain. They complain. They complain. Have they forgotten all the wonderful things that God has done for us? I mean, after all, He did the wonderful, mighty escape. He took us to the Red Sea. And you look puzzled. You don't remember that? Well, you sit down and let me tell you all about it. Our God's a wonderful God. For 400 years, God's people, the Israelites, that's us, were taken away into captivity into Egypt. And they were under the hand of the horrible, mighty Pharaoh, who treated us like slaves and worked us hard and harder every day. We were made to make bricks with straw. He would become angry and take away the bricks. And then we had to take away the straw. And then we'd have to find our own straw and work harder and still make the same number of bricks every single day. It was horrible. And we despised being there. And it was hard to worship God when you're so far away from home and the rituals that you are normally accustomed to. And then one day, God said to our leader Moses, Moses, you go to Pharaoh and you say, Pharaoh, let my people go. And of course Pharaoh said no. And that made him even madder, and he worked us harder and treated us much more cruelly. And Moses went back again. Let my people go. I want my people in the desert so they can worship me as their one and only God in the manner that I have chosen for them. Still Pharaoh said no, and still we worked hard, and it was horrible. The last few years we were there, it was just the most horrible time in our lives. And so Moses got a message from God, and he said, Moses, you go tell Pharaoh, I'm going to send 10 plagues on the people of Egypt. I'm not going to touch my people, the Israelites, but the people of Egypt are going to suffer. And so the first plague came, and if you can imagine, millions and millions and millions of locusts, like giant grasshoppers, came swarming through the skies and landed. And they were in our face and in our hair and in our beds and in our food and on the streets. And they devoured all of the crops in their way. Crops that were designed to feed the people of Egypt. Well, Pharaoh said no. The next plague that came was the plague of the frogs. Oh, green frogs coming out of the rivers and out of the streams and out of the fountains. And they're on the ground, and they're in our homes, and again, they're in our food, and they're everywhere we walk. Can you imagine squishing a little green frog every step that you took? Ooh. And Pharaoh said no. And then there came what we thought was the worst plague ever, and it was the turning of all the water into blood. Nothing to drink, but blood in the streams and in the rivers. Even in the urns in their homes, there was blood. And Pharaoh still said no. Can you imagine a hard-hearted man like him? And finally said to Moses, God said to Moses, you tell Pharaoh that there's a plague coming that is going to touch from the highest person, him, down to the lowly slave woman, because the angel of death is coming. And the firstborn son of every family will die. And Pharaoh said no. Well, we waited. And Moses told us what we needed to do. Find an unblemished, perfect lamb. Slaughter the lamb and roast the meat. Take the blood of the lamb and paint it on the door frame of our houses and our tents. And be ready to go at a moment's notice. Well, we didn't know when that was going to be, but we waited. And on what to me was the longest night in history, we sat in our homes and we waited together. And it was so very quiet. Not even a whisper. Not even the dogs barked on this particular night. And along about midnight, we heard this sound. The sound of the roaring, mighty wind coming and passing all over Egypt. Much louder than the wind that I can make, like the loudest thunderstorm you've ever heard, but without the thunder, just the mighty rushing wind. And we waited. Can you imagine what it felt like in our homes as we heard that sound all over the people of Egypt? And shortly we heard the first cry, the cry of a father screaming for the death of his firstborn son. And then over here, the cry of a mom who had lost her firstborn son. And then it became everywhere, all around us. Horrible, horrible screams of terror in the death of their child. And Pharaoh's son was also dead. And at that point, Pharaoh found Moses and he said, "Moses, take your people and go." And so Moses gave us the orders, and here's what we did. We picked up what we could carry. We didn't take time to cook. We had to take the bread that we were waiting for it to rise tomorrow, and we had that flat unleavened bread, and we took everything that we could, and we rushed toward the Red Sea. Well, that in itself was frightening, because how are we going to get across the sea? What are we going to do? Or did he lead us here to drown? And the mighty hand of God touched the Red Sea, and the waters parted. And we walked across on dry land. Even some of the Egyptian families came with us when they recognized the power of our mighty God. And as we were safe on the other side, the warriors and the soldiers who were coming after us were found in the middle, and God's hand let go the waters, and those people were all drowned. And we were safe. And we were headed to the promised land. Now, today, we still refer to that night as the night of Passover. And we have a Passover feast because the angel of death passed over us because of the blood of the Lamb and the sacrifice that was on our door. And we also worship by having the Feast of the Unleavened Bread, the bread that we had to take with us because we had to leave in such a hurry. Now, I wonder why all of these people who complain about quail and manna and fresh water, have they forgotten that our lives were saved on this, the longest night in history? Because our all-powerful God gave us what we needed, saved us when we needed saving. And all they need to do is to remember to trust Him, to do the same thing again, to give us what we need when we need it. Not always what we want, but what we need. And that's what He did for all of us, and that's what He'll do for you too. Now, I'm sorry I was upset in the beginning as I shared my conversation. I guess the best thing I can do is just pray to God and ask Him to give me the words to share with my friends and neighbors to help them to understand that God's going to be with us wherever we're headed as we move to the promised land. He's going to go with us, and we're going to have some signs that we will see to know that we are there every single day and every single night. Won't you help me pray? Thank you for stopping by, and it's been wonderful to tell you the story of the Passover and the unleavened bread.